So today I'm going to talk about the return of the Divine Mother and really of the intense psychological suppression and degradation of the feminine. And I'm going to talk about what that really means in terms of how it shows up in you as an individual, how it shows up in the world. But I'm really speaking to how deep and how intense the suppression of the feminine really is. People talk about these things. People talk about, the crumbling of the patriarchy, which I've shared in other videos. I don't really love that terminology because to me, if there's unconscious male energy at play, there's always unconscious female energy that has agreed to it. However, for purposes of this conversation, let's, refer to however many years ago that most of our male-dominated religions were created, right around the time of Greece, of ancient Greece. And we have an intense suppression of the feminine, and therefore the body, and therefore emotions, and therefore ecstasy, and therefore intuition, and therefore the oracular gifts, and therefore the fact that we can create simply by receiving. And so what happens is, in the psyche, there's this intense Armageddon, there's this intense battle or split between the male and the female, right? Between the mind and the emotions, between the third and the second chakras. Because we are taught that in so many of the religions, like I just read that even the Tibetan word for female is literally translated as lesser birth. And of course, so many Eastern religions have such a focus on transcendence, and which is a male approach, right? The tantric or ecstatic or physical, the deep submersion into the physical is a more feminine approach. And so we have in our psyche this intense rejection of the mother, of nature, of cycles, of rhythms, of ecstasy, of the body, of pleasure, of reception, and so on. So when I did my own alchemical healing work, when I looked inside of my own mind, pictorially, I kept seeing this theme where my feminine, like I remember I did a healing with between my male and my female presented as Black Moon Lilith, which Black Moon Lilith, one of its meanings is the killer of children, the killer of innocence. And what this means, right, if I look at my own psyche as an archetypal theme in humanity, what this means is that we have this perception of the feminine as being this dangerous, volatile thing that must be suppressed, squished, avoided, right? In Christianity, it appears as the suppression of the denial of our emotions, right? Asceticism, in Judaism, it manifests as a lot of the scriptures only being made available to men. And so when I saw this in myself, I said, wow, in every single healing that I've done, I have seen this theme of my feminine is in a coffin, or it's being portrayed as an evil sorceress, or it's killing, the killer of innocence, the killer of children. And so when I ask, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean if I'm seeing this in myself? What does this mean about the consciousness at large, about what we're moving through archetypally? It means that, many of us are really moving through the process of reclaiming the innocence and the perfection and the beauty and the divinity of the feminine energy, right? I remember reading in the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd saying that the second gene key, which is the most feminine gene key, originally was the first gene key. But then somehow it got reversed, and so the first hexagram, or the first hexagram in the I Ching was the Yang principle. So it's been, you know, flipped around and hidden in so many traditions. And the reason I want to talk about this is because when I've looked at myself and how much I've struggled in my life, you know, because of my own inner psychological splits, and when I work with people who have intense psychological splits and who incarnate as highly feminine beings, one of the major reasons why they experience such severe exhaustion and difficulty and physiological difficulty is because of the intense rejection of the female, right? I remember, again, doing these healings on myself, and I would see the feminine as like this terrifying, you know, like Medusa kind of being. And what that's telling me is that my perception of the feminine is to be some seductive Medusa being. And so this is what needs to be healed. And the way to heal this is the reclamation of the feminine within, the reclamation of the oneness with nature. And that includes sacred rage, right? And sacred rage is something that I say in a very specific way. I think that term can be greatly exaggerated and abused. And rage, you know, like just like in nature, we have volcanoes and we have natural events that disrupt, right? Earth creates boundaries, or Earth creates order, right? By exploding its fire. And sometimes that's necessary, right? When you've really integrated all of the parts of your being, you're much less likely to have outbursts of any kind. But it's important that we don't put any of our sensations, emotions, any of the movements of our mind, we can't exclude them as being non-essential or not sacred, right? So if you've lived an entire life in repression, right, like the women in Iran, obviously the next logical step is to get angry, right? A beautiful mystic that I love says, like, if you're not outraged, like, you're not paying attention. And on the one hand, you know, this might not resonate with everyone, but there's this really easy way of being in the world where, okay, everything is an externalization of what's within, so we only work within. But I think there is no within and without. So, like, if we don't allow ourselves to be outraged by things, then we're never going to be inspired by solutions, right? When I look at educational systems, when I look at the way children are treated, when I look at the way even a lot of spirituality is, I get outraged. I don't stay outraged because I know that's not the fundamental truth. I know the fundamental truth is that there is this unbelievable perfection, and that every soul is creating their reality, and that I don't feel sorry for anyone. Everybody's creating their experience. However, I don't feel that there's an inner or an outer. So if I let myself observe something and feel whatever I naturally feel, then I know that nature will move me to a solution, right? It's really easy to just, you know, close your eyes and pretend like nothing's happening. And neither am I saying to get so indulgent and obsessed with what's happening. And I think some people are genuinely designed to, you know, be more involved in the world stage and in civil actions and in certain themes in the world more so than others, right? There's other people that are really truly more designed to be that, you know, kind of monk life, and we need everybody to be exactly who they are. But the way that this feminine is rejected in us, right? First, it begins as this idea that the feminine is evil. What is the feminine? The feminine is nature. What does that mean for us as a human being? Feminine is the body. Feminine is sexuality. Feminine is, and sexuality is not only feminine, but the feminine is creation, it's ecstasy, it's even chaos. It's pure sensation. It's emotion. It's complete embrace of all the shadow, right? The divine feminine is like, it's like this loving embrace of everything without resistance. You could show up as the most undesirable character according to society, and the divine feminine is that part of us that has this ecstatic love and recognition of, like, I am you, like, I love you no matter what you are, no matter who you are, right? And the male is that pure awareness of, and it can recognize itself in others. It's a different aspect of the divine. But when we reject the feminine, we start to push our bodies around, right? We start to intensely criticize ourselves. We compare ourselves to others. If we were in complete acceptance of the divine feminine, we would be completely accepting as ourselves as we are. We would be completely accepting of the way that our life is unfolding, because that's the way that the divine sees itself in all of its forms. Everything is perfect. A lily, a rose, a bird, a crystal, a blade of grass. Everything is just perfectly what it is, and so are we. But because there's a split inside of us, right? But because we've been dominated by unconscious male energy and therefore unconscious female energy, but because our unconscious male drives us towards competition and future orientation, then we aren't able to just accept ourselves as we really are. And without accepting yourself as you really are, you cannot hold the amount of God consciousness that you are able to hold. You cannot demonstrate your infinite intelligence and love if you remain in complete non-acceptance of yourself. So it's just been really occurring to me lately how deep and intense the rejection of the feminine is. I've seen it in my own mind. I see it in my clients' minds. And it's interesting that many people have incarnated with certain very feminine designs, including myself. And, you know, a lot of times those people don't accept how sensitive they are. They don't accept how delicate they are. They don't accept that they need more rest than others. And so therefore they become sick and exhausted. And so the way to heal that is to realize, if you recognize the perfection and the value of the feminine within you, you can create the life that you wish to create with your sacred male, right? With your concentration and your focus, and then your ability to receive, right? And even without focusing, the universe at large already knows what you desire, and you can receive the life that you wish to live in a very feminine, effortless way. But there's such doubt and extreme resistance about that concept simply because we have been raised in religions that have denied the feminine. Even if you were not raised religiously, you know, we are in, you could call it an astrological period of a male-dominated idea. And a friend of mine said the other day, you know, it's like for so many women, even though women can do whatever they want to do. They can be the CEO of every company. They can, you know, run a marathon. Anybody can do whatever they want to do. However, there is this all the other truth that, like, a woman, and therefore the female in everyone, whether you're a man or woman or non-binary, or this feminine part of us really does thrive living a slower life, a simple life, a receptive life. Right? I'm extremely receptive. I need so much rest, and I've had such a hard time accepting this about myself. But then when I realized this is an archetypal wound that we are literally moving out of, it really gave me strength to move through it. And I'm like, okay, so what I could do, my greatest service, right, in regards to this wound would be to demonstrate, like, I could really relax into my feminine and the reclamation of its inherent value, of its complete perfection, of its complete resonance with nature. Like, if I really accept that, this will heal the world. And same with you if you accept it within yourself. But what I was going to say is that my friend made a comment the other day that, you know, in order for so many women, even though they can accomplish anything, in order for so many women to be able to actually enjoy their femininity, you know, a lot of them look for wealthy men. A lot of them marry people they don't want to marry just for money, because without that security and without the comfort that they need, being delicate and needing rest, it's like they have to sacrifice things. They have to sell their souls, you know, in order for so many women to really unfold into their feminine nature without being afraid of survival. They make choices that they hate themselves for. And I'm not saying that, you know, of course you could have the love of your life and be wealthy, and that's the ideal, right? I teach, another thing that I teach is cosmic capitalism, right? We all have infinite ability to create. But I would ask every single one of you, like, do we want to perpetuate a world where we either have to exhaust ourselves and slave drive ourselves into exhaustion because we don't accept that this natural part of us, the mother, right? We can let the mother nurture us. We can let the mother give to us, the mother within. If we don't deeply love and accept and reclaim this aspect of creation of ourselves, then we will never be in alignment with nature. And therefore we will suffer. We will suffer in the form of physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. We will suffer from making choices out of fear. And so what I see and what I feel is that by meditating, by contemplating this truth that, wait a minute, reality is both, right? It's both the cosmic womb and intention. It's both the womb of creation and the movement and the emanation of light. Within the psyche, the divine feminine is intuition, it's pure embrace, it's unconditional love. Jesus was an example of a deeply masculine and feminine being because he was transcendent of the world and he was also deeply in love with the world. He was not attached to his body and therefore could go through the initiation of crucifixion, but he loved his friends and his probably lover, Mary Magdalene, so intensely and deeply and tantrically. He was both free from form and completely in love with form. So that to me is a beautiful example of what's possible for us. I think a beautiful way to anchor this energy into your psyche is to meditate with a pearl, right? If you imagine kind of a luminescent pearl, because to me the pearl is very much the vibration of mother. And I feel it's so important to bring back the mother inside of us, to place a pearl in the root chakra, right? Just for 5 minutes, like just have this beautiful luminescent pearl and see the divine mother in whatever way she appears, reappearing in the root chakra for you, because the root chakra is our presence. The root chakra is our presence in the physical world, and we need to anchor the presence of Divine Mother in the physical world, because we are transitioning back into a time where, into a cycle where that is, the reverence of that energy is really important. And perhaps, you know, in the past, the avatar of a great female being would have been the symbol of the age, but I think the symbol of this divine female age is the whole community, right? Instead of Mother Mary taking the place of Jesus or a great divine being, it's more so all of us, like really reclaiming the feminine energy. And again, in your personal life, look at, do you boss your body around? Do you criticize yourself for who you are in any way, shape, or form, and where you are in life? Do you not trust your intuition, right? Would you know things? I want to talk for a second about knowing and not knowing. You know, that's something that seems to be a paradox. That's not a paradox. People talk about living in the unknown and not knowing and not knowing. And yes, that's a part of what we wish to experience, is to experience ourselves as the quantum field and to be surprised by life, the way that things come into our life, right? That feels like an unknown. Things come out of nowhere, synchronicities come out of nowhere. But the truth is that you also do know everything on some level, because you are the mind of God, right? So while we are living in the unknown in the quantum, we also on some level we do know everything. So we know things about situations. So what that has to do with the feminine energy is like, don't use the idea of I don't know anything to ignore your intuition. That's a male trickster energy. That's a religious teaching being used by the trickster to have you decline or reject your femininity. Your feminine energy just knows things about a situation. If you were, a mother has heightened sense of smell about who's around her children, and so do you. You have that sense of smell about everything in your life that you have to make decisions about. So look at, again, bossing your body around, ignoring your intuition, not trusting the receptive aspect of creation. If you are too much in the male energy and trying too hard and intending too hard and doing too many techniques, you are rejecting the feminine within you. And I say all of this with such compassion, because this has been my biggest struggle in my awakening, to heal this break inside of my psyche. But I feel like I will be able to help heal this wound. They say the wound is where the light comes in, and the cracks in a crystal are what give it its healing properties. So ask yourself, ask your higher self, how do I snuff out my femininity? How am I out of alignment with nature? If you're a woman, do you respect the cycles of your menstruation? It's really nice to sync your physical activity with your cycle. There's a lot of benefit to that. Do you listen to what your body just wants to eat? Do you let your body choose foods for you instead of mental, right? Instead of studies and scientific reports and trends and fashions and intermittent fasting, right? Look at this very, very practically. How can I reclaim the feminine, which is nature, which is what my body's telling me, which is what my intuition is telling me, which is my ability to receive? How do I reject those things? And how can I stop rejecting those things? And really, the truth is that when you really, really see clearly how you are rejecting the feminine within, it will start to clear up on its own. Realize this is an archetypal wound that we are healing. So don't feel, it's at my mystery school that I went to, they call it the Battle of Armageddon. That's how intense it is. That's how intense it is. And I think it's important to acknowledge how intense it is, because if you can name it and see it for what it is, it will change. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day.